Hey, what's up? I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and welcome to The Right Mindset. Today, I'm going to be talking with a epic fantasy author, a man of many words in many pages that I met many years ago, 2016, at the New York Comic Con. We had tables next to each other. Right now, I'd like to present to you Mr. EA Channon, also Edward. How's it going, Edward?
I'm doing great, sir. How are you? How are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm glad we were able to make it into the ether of the internet. It's a wonderful technology, also a terrible invention.
Yes, yes. Now, I still hope that someday the internet will be able to make it that I can just beam myself from where I am to New York City without having to deal with airline security.
Well, speaking of teleportation devices, how many people have to turn into the
Oh, uh-oh. I lost you there.
something's wrong with it? I lost
Yep,
you. All right, you back?
I'm back.
Can you hear me? Hey.
I can hear you.
All right, it
Sorry.
happens. I said
Yeah.
it's all right. It's all right. Hey, listen, it's part of the process, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
that's
what I was asking is, you said you wish the internet would allow you to just transform from one spot to another spot, and I was like, how many people have to be turned into the fly before we realize teleportation might not be the way?
Yeah, I can see that. Hopefully, Jeff Goldblum won't happen to me. That's the main thing. I don't want to.
I mean, I wouldn't mind turning into Jeff Goldblum, but the fly, one is sexy, the other one, plays jazz. So, you know,
I mean, his latest role in that show on Netflix, Chaos,
oh
when he
yes.
played Zeus, I thought that was just perfect for him. Yeah, after doing that Marvel films and stuff like that, I thought, yeah, he could definitely play Zeus with no problem. It's like he was made for it.
Yeah, he did really well with the different ranges of emotion for Zeus, and like Zeus's short temper, but also trying to lead. But they canceled that show. Did you hear they didn't?
Yeah, I was so disappointed about that. I don't
Yeah,
understand.
they were
Yeah.
like, oh, people are watching, so we should just.
Oh, it's getting too popular.
Yeah. You know what? We should also, as Netflix, we should have ads now, and then also limit the seasons you can watch unless you pay more.
Yeah. Is that what they're doing? Oh my god.
Yeah, if you get the lowest model, not that I have it, but I was reading about it, how like the lowest model is ads, and then you get limited seasons.
Might as well just switch on the regular television then and just watch your local station.
I know, right? Let's get cable. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. Oh no, I still use antennas.
You gotta have. That's the only reason I have kids. If you're from like the 60s, 70s, and 80s, the children just held the antennas in their arms like this. I remember those days. There was
Oh.
a wrench on the to change the channel. There was a wrench, attached to the.
Now, today being Thursday, I can see that, throwback Thursday, because I remember having to do that when we got our first telly, and I had to stand there behind the telly, and my dad's like, "No, to the left. Come on. Yeah, okay." And I'm like, "Well, what do I do now?" And he goes, "Just stand there.
Yeah, don't sneeze.
Yeah, it's the BBC. I want you to hold on to it." I'm like,
That's it.
"But Dad, I want to watch it."
Not today, son.
No. It's beyond you.
Yeah. And I don't think kids will ever realize how heavy televisions were
Oh
back in the day. You know,
That's why Arnold Schwarzenegger is the size of he is he used to be a television shipping line.
between his wall building and construction, he would do the television. I remember having to lift those things by myself because you just didn't want to, put somebody into an inconvenience. I mean, like, can you help me lift the table? It's easier to carry a couch
Yeah.
than there was a TV. There was so
Didn't they used to have I remember them having like a turntable connected
yeah,
to it, big speakers.
yeah.
Yeah.
They had the long. There was a television that was like a long bureau style,
Mhm.
big wooden box, and then there was the a record player on the top left that like you could open up the thing. They had the TV in the middle, and then they had like the stereo system on it, and you're just like, oh, this is top of the line. And then you're
Yeah.
like, wait a minute. And that technology now is so. Our phones have more power and technology and capability than that device that cost at least $1,500.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised given that things kind of, do that loop of, returning and coming back and all that. And I wouldn't be surprised if that type of telly comes back and it's now included in microwave. Uh, you know, because how dare you actually leave the room to actually make your food
Yeah.
when, you can't hit pause or something like that. Nope, nope, we've got the microwave right there.
Are you telling me you don't have the toilet bowl recliner?
It's on order. Amazon has it coming next week.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. Because when you're watching TV and you're sitting through those Netflix ads, you don't want to get up. You just want to just let it out.
I have it in my car. I mean, I have a refrigerator in the middle console, and I ordered the toilet version so I wouldn't have to get out of the car.
It makes
So,
sense. It makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. The dogs are quite very jealous about them.
Speaking of toilets, let's get into writing.
Sure.
The crap
Segue
yeah, the crap a writer has to deal with when it comes to writing. Now you've been writing for quite some time now, and that's not an age reference. It's just your whole life. You've been basically a writer.
Gray hair is causing me to write.
Oh, is that great? I'm colorblind. All I see is white. No.
Okay, I'll go with that.
Yeah. It's a beautiful red. I promise you. It's a beautiful, beautiful red. Now, you have, as it says, if people have been reading the bio on the scroll below, the ticker, as one might say, you have a 6-book series called Flesh of the Blood, right?
Yep.
Was this a R.R. Martin kind of thing where you're like, I have one book, and then you're like, wait, this story's bigger than that, so it's 2, and then you're like, oh, maybe the second book is really 2 books, so now I have 3, and then you're like, it might be 4, like, or were you always in the mindset of like, I want to write a 6-book series
and take a holiday between the 4th and the 5th book that takes 20 years?
Yeah. I got other things to do, like to write 2 massive historical tomes. It's several short stories. And then
actually, the whole thing actually came about when I was writing, recovering from PTSD from being in the military, and when I was under therapy, with the light shining on you, and it's like, you will get better, type scenario. I'm sitting there writing his diary, as all veterans do to recover, obviously. And this book story just started coming out.
Oh, interesting.
And I had already gotten a degree in history, Scottish history. So I was like, well, why don't I just take some of my love of Scottish history and Celtic history and Russian and German and Spanish and all that and just throw it together, and my love of fantasy and sci-fi. And it just kind of got thrown together. And I decided that, you know what, this is a great story. And so my wife just decided, you know what, you're very weird, so I'm going to put you in this room and lock it up, and you're going to write a story, and then when I let you out, it's going to be done. So I just started writing, and it just kind of literally just flowed out of my mind, like a spigot that was just open, and I just started writing and writing and writing. And I literally started writing until she came and said, listen, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, I'm writing this book. And she's like, well, you've been writing for like 5.5 years now. Do you think you're done with it? And I'm like, let me check. So I reread the whole thing, and it took me actually probably about 3 months to actually read all that I've done. I mean, that's through editing and editing. Editing is the writer's curse. No matter what you write, you got to edit and just make sure, was I speaking English, gibberish?
Yeah. Wait, are you saying the first draft isn't the finished draft?
If I was Wonder Woman, yes. But no, so I think probably, by the time I look at it, by the time I start writing, by the time a person is reading the book, it's probably gone through 20 to 25 edits at least,
Yeah, give or take.
So when the book actually got to the editing stage, my publisher at the time, decided that, you know what, obviously we can't make a book that's 3,000 pages into one book. We obviously can't do that. You're not Stephen King. You're
Yeah,
you're not even Tolkien. You just can't do it. So I was like, but I'm Jesus Christ. I can do that, you know.
that's right.
So they decided to break it up. So we worked it out, and it actually ended up being 6 books altogether. And so what we did is when we broke it up, we the only thing I had to do was edit the breaks of
Oh yeah, yeah,
ending the story and starting the story. So that was the only part that took place after that.
yeah.
And then after they started working on their side of the editing and formatting, making sure that the words are going to fit on the page the right way, making sure things make sense. They have a person that goes through it that makes sure that the commas are in the right spot, you know, the dots and the T's and all that stuff. And while they were doing that, I decided that I also, when I was in the military, I was a medic, but I loved maps. And
Hmm.
one thing about living in Europe, even now, even with technology, people still use paper maps.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, the great thing about living in the UK is we are really good at making maps, even to the point that when you see maps in North America, in many cases, they're still based on the British way of making maps.
Hmm.
And so, you know, today when I tell people, it's like, yes, when I would look at a map, you know, my CEO would say, right, we're going to go over there. I would sometimes write on the map, here's a troll, you know, he's going to be, and hopefully he wouldn't see my little scribble on there,
Yeah,
you know, because we're just bored to death. And I'm like,
that's funny.
you know,
You
I
got
would
yeah,
battle on the map and stuff, you know. But I would take that love of maps and I just started to throw those maps of the world that I had written about, started throwing them in there.
yeah.
And I thought it's unique because most books you read of fantasy, the maps are at the beginning.
Hmm.
I decided, well, why can't they be in the middle, at the end, at the beginning, you know, all sorts of things? Because while you're sitting there reading the book, you don't want to keep having to go back to the front.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
you might get to the part that, oh, hey, here's a new map. Where am I? And so I started to throw in, I guess you could say, my critics or critique of what I wanted to see in a fantasy story. And a show that also included the cover. The
Mm,
one thing that I have noticed over the 600 years of living that I thought that why not have a cover that actually makes sense?
yeah,
Because most of the stories, even some of the writers that I love, still wouldn't have a cover that wouldn't make sense. You know, the book is about uh, Lord of the Rings, right? I've seen
yeah.
Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And they'll have they have a picture of a tower on it, and I'm like, okay, all right, obviously there's going to be a tower in there, but it didn't make sense to me growing up. And so I decided to do that. So all the covers that are on the each book is actually a scene that happens in the book, but it actually makes sense to what you're reading on top of that.
Yeah, like it has a feel and a theme.
Right. Yeah. I'm always one of those people that when you get to that particular scene, a light bulb kind of pops over your head and you're like, oh, right, okay, now it makes sense. You know?
Yeah, yeah. And, I just real quick, it's interesting that you said that, your publisher was like, "We gotta split this book up." That's what they did with the Lord of the Rings series. Tolkien wrote a book, and then they're like, "We can't release this, it's too big." And he's like, "Alright." And then they broke it up, and he actually was not a fan of some of the titles, including, Return of the King. He didn't like the titles of the books.
Yeah.
So, it's interesting that even back then and today, sometimes we forget word count, it matters,
Yeah.
you know?
I think even today, because of the way the people's attention spans have made it that you can't read more than a chapter without kind of looking off to the side, go, "Oh, look," you know, or something else kind of gets in the way. So that's another thing that I figured out when I was writing was I made it that chapters were shorter.
Mhm.
Chapters made sense that a scene could be done in a chapter.
Yep.
And so I didn't add in some ridiculous things that I had read so many ways, and so even in historical books, when I was reading, the Battle of Agincourt and stuff like that, the author would write that the grass was wet, and I'm like, I don't care if the grass was wet. You're writing about the fact that guys were slipping. I'm thinking, obviously, the grass is wet, so you don't need to tell me that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I decided, well, I don't need to sit there and describe it, or there's a table in the room, because in the next sentence, a guy gets thrown across and he slams into a table. Well, okay, I've now described that table twice. So I
Yeah.
thought I could take that out. So I've made it that each thing is a lot shorter based on the idea that people attention spans would go. And I've gotten responses from hundreds of people saying they just love the fact that they can read a chapter 15, 20 minutes, depending
Yeah,
on capacity.
so when you say you have short chapters, what are they, like 15 to 3,000 words on average? Is that what
Oh,
or are you sitting
I
lower?
I kinda looked at it as, like, actually not through word count, but more about page count.
Oh,
So,
page count, yeah. Well, you
yeah,
do a 6-9 book, right? It's that's your site, because if I remember, they're about 6-9, but you also have hardcovers, I think, right? Yeah.
we had a series of hardcovers that came out, and it was like a one-off type of
Mhm.
hardcover. We were going to do a hardcover in 2020, but this plague kind of happened.
What do you mean?
I keep telling people, it's like, I'm not a total big fan of his, but Nostradamus actually predicted in 2020 there was going to be a big plague followed by the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah.
It kind of happened. Kind of scares me. So, you know,
How come he didn't see his own death coming, though?
yeah.
He's probably like, "Who's this Nostradamus guy?" Now, for people listening, sometimes word count can affect the speed of reading, but you could also write the pace could be quick too.
Right,
I know that in my books, some of my chapters are on the long side because they're epic fantasies, and
right.
people usually like, I couldn't put this chapter down, and to get that kind of flow, this is for anyone who's listening. To get that kind of flow, you kind of have to do what Edwards is saying, where you don't need to say the grass is wet if people are slipping on the grass. You don't need to say there's a huge table in the room if a guy is going to get thrown or a girl is going to get thrown through the table. Allow each line to have purpose and
Mhm.
not be filler or fluff. And I always talk about, when you walk into a room, you don't have to be like, it's 6 by 12, and there's no, they walk across the rug, describe the rug. They sit down on the couch, describe the couch. They look at the
Mhm.
fire, describe the fire. Like, you
Yeah,
don't have to describe anything until it becomes purposeful,
right,
but atmosphere and immersion is important, but it doesn't mean you have to sacrifice the narrative flow
right.
just to be like, the grass is green, by the way, and also wet.
Unless you're on a red planet and the grass is red, but, that's a different thing,
Yeah,
but
that's a whole different thing. And your story actually takes place on a distant planet, right? Lost in
it
time?
does, yeah.
Mm.
It's, unlike, Lord of the Rings and so many other ones, this one actually takes place on a different planet. And there's a whole reason for that, actually. It's the surprise of actually how I set everything up was the fact that Flesh of the Blood, or the series Flesh of the Blood, actually is the series ending. So when you think
Mm.
about it, there's actually a prequel to Flesh of the Blood. So I decided, actually, it wasn't actually kind of the same thing. When I actually got done with the whole thing, publishers like, well, what are you going to name the series? And I'm like, oh, actually didn't think about that. And I had the name for each book when
Yeah.
they broke it off, because I thought, okay, this one makes sense for this book, this one makes sense for that one, blah 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 blah. But they were like, well, you have to have a name for the whole series. You just can't call it Devastation and all this other stuff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So I decided my love of science. On top of that, I thought, well, how about flesh of the the blood. Okay, here we go. Think of the blood membrane.
Mhm.
Each membrane of a blood cell is in a lot of ways like the flesh of your skin. And I thought, flesh of the blood could mean so many things. Could it mean that the blood cell is scientific? Is it going to expand? Is it different creatures? It could mean different species on stuff like that. So it just kind of ended up being that. And
Interesting. Interesting.
yeah,
So
but
it's either that or the Ballad of the Bagpiper, really.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That one was my semi-autobiography of me playing the bagpipes and all the things that happened to me, which ended up making it more like a Monty Python episode.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. Actually, just recently I met or ran into John Cleese.
Oh, nice.
I gave him one of those books, and he was just laughing his butt off because he just thought, "Oh my God, I can see you doing this."
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, yes.
Now, this is a little off writing, but is John Cleese as tall as they say he is?
Yes, he's very tall, but unfortunately, because of his age, he's shrunk, which
Oh, so
is
now he's like 7'2" and not
yeah,
so.
yeah. Used to be 8, but now he's 7 foot. Yeah, no.
Yeah,
I would actually say that he's probably about 6'2" now.
yeah. Okay, all
Something like
right.
that.
Does he
But
still
yeah,
have silly walks, or is that just a cane?
oh, yeah, yeah, unfortunately, yeah, I mean, he's almost, I think, almost 80 years old,
Yeah,
something like
yeah.
that, so he literally can't do silly walks anymore, so,
I know, I
yeah,
know. He does silly sits. That's what
yes, yeah, yeah, but
he's a
he's
smart
still a
man,
funny guy, he's
though.
very relaxed and laid back and stuff, so,
Yeah, I like watching. He has. I don't know if it's still on, but I watched like reruns or something on YouTube where he sits down and there's like cats and animals like running around on the show, and he's just like interviewing guests, because he loves animals with it.
yeah,
And he's just so smart. He's so quick. He interestingly pushes against social norms and and he's
yeah,
obviously a writer. He's an excellent writer.
yeah,
But going back to writing and stuff like that.
sure,
There's this debate on what's a better way of writing, being a pantser or an architect, right? Are you gardening, or whatever the case may be? And has your approach to writing changed over the years? Have were you? I feel like you were a pantser originally, but has that turned into an outliner? Do you mix them?
yeah.
Yeah. Do you mix and match? Like, what is your writing process? Like, if you were going to write a new book today, if you're like, I'm going to start over, how might you do it? And if we could kind of talk through each step.
Yeah, sure. Actually, I just got done writing my first horror novel.
Oh,
Yeah, I've grown up since I don't know 3 4 years old, loving horror, and mainly because my family home in the northwest of England actually is over 1,000 years old.
oh, wow.
It's got stories to it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, there's a story that because of where it is, that there used to be during the high fog or thick fog, a Roman legion could be heard marching by in the
Wow.
fog. You can hear the chains and stuff like that. So, when I actually sat down to write this book,
Mhm.
it was literally a whole style different style of writing because this time I was writing as it was kind of happening right now
Mm.
instead of Flesh of the Blood and the prequels that are going to be coming out. Those are, in a totally different type of realm. This one was happening right now. So I felt like in a lot of ways the writing style had to change because in fantasy you can literally just say throw something against the wall, I feel, and okay, right, that wall is now purple because in my world that wall can be purple.
Yeah.
But in the horror novel you can't do that. You have to still make it kind of real, and unless you're making it a horror novel took place 200 years ago. uh, but I feel that when I first started writing, the one thing that I've noticed that uh, periods and commas and questions and the way you put quotations have changed.
Yeah.
Even in the 20 years that I've been writing, they have changed because the way that society has decided that we like the fact that the quotations are no longer two quotations, they're one quotation, because I don't know why, but you know, it's not like you're running out of ink, but they've decided in so many ways, the way that I've been told, that we've decided that quotations are no longer two, they're one. We're going to put a period here instead of there. And so I'm like, okay, you do it. You That's why you have an editor.
Yeah, yeah, all great writers have a great editor. That's the
Yeah. Yeah, I unfortunately, my editor that actually did the whole Flesh series, she passed away because of the plague.
oh,
She was living in Texas, and she got the plague,
the
and she
COVID.
passed
Yeah,
away
yeah.
from it. And it took her a long time to actually understand my style of writing, because I was writing from a English British style of education.
Yeah, yeah, over the seas. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was like, "Well, if this is gonna mainly become at first American, readers, we've gotta change it, the style." And I'm like, I didn't like that, but I understood it. So, she edited with an American style editing, and I actually from her, I actually ended up learning how to write, I guess you could say American style, or, you know, as you can say, American style.
American,
Yeah, American, right?
American.
Can't do that,
Uh,
George Bush.
yeah. Now we're America pretzels. Uh, yeah, yeah. There is definitely because with editors, one of the things they're always looking for is like, are we spelling a word with the English or the American English,
Mhm.
like color,
Yeah,
the OUR or the OR, right? So like that is something to be conscious of. I know when I write though, um you do have to be conscious of the region you're going to write in because obviously if you're going to send it to Portugal, you can't, you probably want to write it in Portuguese, or
right. Yeah,
whatever the case may be.
yeah.
Or it's Italian, you might want to write it in Italian,
Yeah, actually, I had, the book came out in Poland and Russia, years ago,
oh yeah,
and, I had a friend's daughter who spoke and wrote both languages, and she sat down and, she was about 18 at the time, and she sat down and was writing it, and she literally told me, "We can't say it this way because there's no word in that in
yep,
Polish." I'm like,
yeah.
"Okay, cool. What would you say?" She would tell it to me, and I'm like, "I don't speak Polish."
I don't even know what that means in Polish.
Yeah.
What's it mean? She's
I mean,
it
you can
means
literally
this.
be insulting me. I had no idea. You know? So she was like, "Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay, blah, 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 you know, this is what
Yeah,
I, instead of two words, no, it's four words. Okay, right, cool. And then the same thing in Russian. It came out and said, yeah, we can't say it this way because in Russian that doesn't make sense. And the guy takes the sword and stabs it through his chest in English, but in when you say it in Russian,
it's
you're
hug.
actually saying the guy is running into the sword. And I'm like, well, he's not really running into the sword, So yeah, we just got to change it up here and there. So
Yeah,
yeah, I have had it that because of the language changes, because of the male female way that languages are,
yeah.
I've had to have things change, and it's just fascinating. I find things like that just absolutely fascinating. How words and language changes things.
It's all yeah, it's all relative. I'm in a biracial relationship, and she speaks Spanish, and I always tell her, I go, if like gracias, great, grazie, gracie, right? Depending on like Latin or Italiano or
Right.
gracias, right? Is a Spanish, and gracias doesn't mean thank you. It's loosely translated into thank you because it actually means grace,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or de nada, which means it's loosely translated into you're welcome, but it's of
Mhm.
nothing, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, language is always going to be a loose translation, and that's just my,
Mhm.
you prove the point of my presentation is that even in Russia they change it. Now, my real question though, when Russians read your violently bloody epic fantasy book, were they like, why is this romance?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. They
Uh,
thought, "Oh, this happens to us all the time. What are you talking about?"
this is nothing. Why is it so happy?
Yeah.
People are
Yeah.
dying. I love this.
Yeah. I mean, and this was 2010, I think, is when the book actually was translated into Russian. And the first comment that I received through an email was like, "You know what? I think we need to have like a cosplay LARP type, scenario like this. And I'm like, okay, cool. So they sent me a thing. All these fans got together outside of Moscow, and they
Yeah.
started playing a couple of the characters. And I thought, oh, this is really cool. Okay, send me the link. I want to put this thing up and stuff. And they couldn't send me the link. But when they did send me the link, it didn't make sense. But I'm sitting there watching this video, and a guy gets his fingers chopped off by a real sword, and I'm like, "What?"
Wait, like like a real, like it wasn't effects.
It was real, and I'm like, "Oh my god, what did you get him to the A&E?" "Oh, no, 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 that's fine.
It's a
Makes us a
Thursday.
man." And I'm like, "It makes you unable to write now." I'm like, "Oh my," and it turns out that they sent me these things that in Russia, they literally, when they do movies and cosplay and stuff like that, they literally, almost to the point, will be as real as possible.
That's crazy. Well, I mean,
And
these are people who have bears for dogs.
you know,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Like, oh, look at my Rottweiler. That's all you have? I got a brown bear.
yeah. I fed it too many kibbles. Yeah.
He's biting your arm off. Nah, he's just playing.
Yeah.
Playing. He just threw you against the tree. Oh, he's roughhousing. Just yeah, that's what bears do, you know.
Exactly. I mean, I had so much fun with Russian fans until, unfortunately, because of what's going on there. But they're the nicest people in the world, and I have so much fun. And I still speak to a lot of the fans in Eastern Europe and such
Yeah.
all the time. And
At least the ones that have fingers that can type, but
yeah. Yeah, and actually, funny enough, actually, because of what's going on, one of my fans actually was able to get out, and he smuggled himself across to Kazakhstan, and
mm,
then from there they went to London, and then to here in the Pacific Northwest, and I literally ran into him at a Safeway, and he was
wow.
like, "Edward." Right. "Who are you?" "Why are you stalking me?"
I'm the guy who lost the fingers for you.
No, no, but he was like, "Yeah, I've known your books, for almost 20 years now," and, he's telling me my story or his story, and I'm like, Whoa, okay, that's very cool." So, yeah, he definitely acknowledged, through broken English, that it's totally real. That's how the Russians kinda live. They look at it as life is so hard here, you might as well have fun while it's hard at the same time.
Well, yeah. Like my father was in Vietnam and he used to always say, if you didn't laugh every day, you wouldn't get out alive. Like it doesn't matter. Even if you did get out alive, he's like, you'd be dead inside. And
Yeah,
you had all you could do was laugh, you know?
yeah,
And that
yeah, and
that's the way it is, you know?
yeah, and I think that's one reason being a medic, I decided that the battle scenes and the ups and downs in the series, all the series, even in the horror novel, I made it that if somebody got hurt, somebody gets hit by an arrow, somebody gets an arm chopped off or something like that, they don't just like in the movies pull it out and go ha ha, and go running across. If you get hit by an arrow in the chest, it's gonna hurt,
Oh
and
yeah.
you're not gonna move. You're gonna fall down, and you could, depending on how close you are to the bowman, get knocked back, from the recoil or the effect of the arrow hitting you,
Yeah.
and arms and stuff like that getting chopped off and all that stuff. So, being a medic, I was feeling when I was writing those scenes, I was remembering things of when I was taking care of the lads on the field, and so you kind of get that idea. So, because of the way that I write too, I'm kind of an emotional writer, and I see the battle scenes kind of around me. I remember this one scene that I wrote, and it ended up kind of thinking of like there was a scene in the first Avengers film when the camera is kind of like in the middle of all the Avengers and they're in New York City and the camera's moving around and you see each hero kind of getting his
Oh, the
pose.
circle shot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was kind of thinking, not this happened before that movie, but I was kind of thinking the same way that think of like a camera moving around and you see each character doing their little bit in this battle, and I thought that was a great scene. And my editor came back and she said that was probably one of her favorite scenes
Oh, yeah, yeah.
in that particular book because of the way that I wrote it. And each character in that particular, like a paragraph, they had their emotions, they had their ups and downs, and it was a quick. You literally go through a chapter and you would get through 8 characters and their ups and downs and who might live, who might die. But the same thing too. I would throw in humor in there too. So
Yeah, I mean, war is funny.
exactly. That's why. Is this your shoe? Yeah.
Yeah. But how can you be killing people without a pun? Like you need. That's why comedians kill or they die on stage. It's kill or be killed.
Hey, I'm trying to decide what to have for dinner tonight.
Yeah.
Sausages.
Well, that's how you know you're in love with a woman, is if you're talking about tomorrow's to-do list. While you're making love. What do we do? Tomorrow's garbage, and then what are we doing for dinner? Oh God, I don't know. What I've always found fascinating about writing war or reading people, whoever, is like no one's affected by it. I'm just like, what's going on here? Especially when they're kids. I'm just like, this person just killed, like they took a life.
Mhm.
I get like, if you take a life, it's either them or you, and you're in a situation where but you still did it, and like the brain has to, even like experiencing love for the first time or heartbreak, and like characters not really being influenced by that. Like I've always found that interesting when I read books, like that sometimes we forget that it's fake. So like we're not, as writers, maybe they forget that you have to have a consequence, good or bad. There has to be a consequence to the cause and effect of things, and
Right.
the not that it has to be. Obviously, it's a suspension of disbelief. Like you
Yeah.
said, someone gets shot in the shoulder with an arrow, they're down for the count. But it's like the narrative has the narrative.
Yeah.
Like they're still the hero. They still have to get up the tower.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
Just
Sylvester Stallone getting up the stairs. Like, I can do it. Oh, stop hitting me. Yeah.
Yeah. I need a 15-minute break. Can we take a break? Cut to someone else. Cut to someone else. But at the same time, it's also nice to see the psyche being affected, the emotional truth. Because even if we're going to suspend disbelief when it comes to the physical, because again, as soon as you have magic or fireballs, like anything is possible now.
Yes.
Like
Yeah, hold on. I got my my bucket brewing over here. I gotta do some things. Yeah, totally. No, I definitely agree with that. I mean, my writing is my therapy, so I put all my emotion into it. So it will have war, it will have comedy, and it will have sorrow in there.
Yeah.
Friends of mine that aren't walking the planet anymore, I put them into a few of the characters,
Oh, that's nice.
and I put their humor in there, their ways of thinking on scenarios and things like that. And so that's the way I kind of think about writing, is you're gonna give each character an emotion that it could be out there. They
Yeah.
could be the darkest person in the world, but they might have a really good sense of humor, or they might be a total scaredy cat. But when the scenario gets really rough, and they're being attacked by 100,000 orcs, they turn into Hercules. But
Yeah. Because
they're
they just need
scared
to
of
be
a
pushed.
mouse.
Yeah. It happens.
Uh,
I often on my channel on the right mindset, the YouTube, whatever, I often talk about how characters need positions. Like they
yeah.
have to have these beliefs, like whatever it is. And the example I always give is, some people are Jets fans, some people are Giants fans, but how much of a fan are you?
Right.
Are you like a casual fan? Do you know who they are? Is a part of your family culture? Are you an extremist? Like, and those become your positions, and that's everything. So like even in battle, like you're saying, they're cowards, right? But
Right. Yeah.
to make narrative interesting is you have to be able to challenge those positions, and then they're either going to change completely, somewhat, or not at all. And if
Mm,
they don't change, you got to double down, and
right.
that would be the benefit or the consequence, I should say,
Yeah.
of not changing. And so it's interesting that you say that, where it's like if somebody's a coward and they're pushed to the brim and there's 100 orcs,
Yeah.
you know, in that situation, they're changing completely
Yeah.
for survival. So their
Right.
position was challenged, both physically and probably, I would say, even spiritually, because they're like,
Yeah.
I don't want to die.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
I think that's just a human type of thinking, really. In the end, that basic of basic things in the back of your mind survive,
Yeah.
s- comes together, and even when you're on your first date and having a nice glass of chicante or chicante with flava beans, you got to survive,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, someone's dead in that situation. If he's living with the Fabians.
By the way, that's my wife's scariest movie. she
Really?
she freaks out with that film. I don't know why, but she absolutely freaks out with that one.
Is it the lambs or the silence?
I think I have no idea, but I think it's just Hannibal's thinking or
Oh,
something.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, man, for 13 minutes of screen time and getting an Oscar, it makes sense.
yeah,
He was fabulous in it. Yeah, yeah. All right. So you like to write realistic characters, realistic elements, realistic
mhm,
emotions. You like to kind of like elevate the I would say the graphicness of war.
right.
But let's get down to the soft moments. When you're writing soft moments, right? And I'm not talking about just sad. I'm talking about character moments where there's a because you always need the wave to go down sometimes. All
Yeah,
narratives need to go up and down, right?
yeah, yeah.
What is it that you tried to place into those quieter moments that really make it an EA Channing kind of story? Like,
Mm.
if you're saying your violence is like this, we get it. But what is your like? Oh, this is definitely an EA nice quiet moment.
uh, Probably, I am a romantic at heart,
Mm,
and but I think because I'm European or in British, I'm a romantic at heart, but that also could have sorrow in that. So
mhm.
it's a Celtic story, because not all endings are great.
Yeah,
That's so or a lot of people say if it's an Irish story, it's never going to end right,
it's
but
gonna
I
end with herpes. I get it.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Uh, but it's a Celtic thing because I think when I'm writing, I haven't really decided on until you actually the horror novel. I never wrote a absolute romantic scene because
Mhm.
when I was writing Flesh, I was thinking this might be read by 10-year-olds, 15-year-olds, who knows? And
Yeah,
I didn't want to make it
in
in.
adult bodies too.
Yes, yes. And I didn't wanna make it that it was gonna end up being in the X-rated section of the,
Yeah,
of
yeah.
of what it was, and so I've been asked that when they actually see the title, that the title, don't read it by the title, because it's
Wait, Edward. So let me get this. You're like, oh, kids are gonna read this. So the blood and violence will be very realistic and emotionally traumatic, but I can't show a penis.
Yeah, exactly.
I get it. I get it. No,
It's still
no,
modern world.
yeah, no one's ever seen their own penis. I don't even look down when I pee. I have to look up at the ceiling. I'm like, I just don't want to be. But
It scares
and
me
Ted,
when I we look down there.
yeah, yeah. But show me a cadaver.
Yeah.
It's Tuesday.
Yeah, no, that's probably, I think that's probably an American way of thinking too, is the fact that you can be as violent as possible. You can have blood everywhere,
Yeah.
guts, people flying, exploding, stuff like that. But oh my gosh, if you show a boob,
Well, you got to remember television. You couldn't even say you were having sex. You couldn't show someone pregnant. You couldn't even defer to the concept of intimacy. And couples on TV shows and movies had to be sleeping in separate beds.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but going back to this quiet, what I'm talking about with quieter moments, I'm not necessarily talking about intimacy. I'm talking about like two people just hanging out at a bar after like a massive romp of war, or like a
right.
group of people's sort of just sitting around. Like, what is a staple of an EA Channing, a kind of like quiet moment? Like, what are you trying to say in those moments? Like, what is something they go, oh,
Um,
this is
I think probably the thing that I'm probably thinking the few times that I have gotten to the part, like say after a battle scene and stuff, is a few characters, or my thinking is you just have to sit there. And I would sit there because after particular things that have happened, and just kind of like when you're looking at a computer screen, your eyes afterward kind of get blurry and stuff. So you look off to the side, and I would do that. And I felt that a couple of characters would just sit there and kind of look off to the side,
mm,
or not look at anybody, and they would just kind of go, "What just happened?"
yeah, because it
Um,
does blur.
yeah, yeah.
My father has told me. I mean, I've obviously been blessed not to have experienced that, but my father, again, he got blown up in Vietnam. So
Yeah,
uh,
my wife's uncle was a Green Beret in Vietnam.
yeah.
He spent 15 minutes in country, he told me, because he was in a helicopter and he jumped out of the helicopter,
Oh,
landed, and a grenade blew up next to him. And he is the character from National Lampoon's Vacation. He's Cousin Eddie. We turn on a microwave next to him. Bzzt, hi, how you doing?
I was like, I'm just emptying the shitter. Uh,
Yeah, he is the quintessential example of cousin Eddie there.
that's it.
But I think definitely it's a human thing to block out certain things that have
Yeah,
happened to you, traumatic things, until certain things happen to you, and it happens to me every day that a smell, a sight, something I hear, and so I think I put that in a few of the characters after a few of the
yeah,
scenes that all of a sudden they're like, "What just happened?" You know, okay, and they'll have a beer, or not really tea because I didn't invent tea in this world, but they would have a beer and they would sit there and probably around a campfire and just kind of go, you know, tr- th- I'm trying to make the reader understand that something just happened,
yeah,
and the mind has an odd way of getting through the what rethinking or going back at what happened. And sometimes just doing that, your mind shuts down because it doesn't want to do
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
And
it's usually subconsciously too. It's not like we're consciously. It's like I got to protect you. Not to throw it to comic books, but that is the in universe explanation for Wolverine's um, loss of memory. You know
yeah,
how like a lot of times he can't remember the past. It's because his brain, his healing factor is deleting those memories to heal him, which is
mhm,
based off the pseudoscience of the psychology of what you're talking about, where subconsciously it just goes. The only difference is Wolverine doesn't have to deal with it; gets erased. With people who like deal with trauma,
yeah,
uh, like you said, a certain smell. My
mhm,
father said he'd be sitting down on the couch just watching TV, and then all of a sudden, like a noise or whatever would happen, and then he would be able to look around him, and he was sitting on the couch in the field watching people be killed,
yeah,
and that's just what PTSD did to him. And
yeah,
uh, it is to see that in a book, I think, is important to
mhm,
recognize that, because remember they used to downplay it. They just got
oh,
shell shock,
yeah,
right? Like it was they just kind of, oh, they're just, oh, they got the jitters, or they're crazy. And it's like they're dealing with their body is trying to heal through. So to see that kind of story, or any elements of that, I think is important,
mhm,
just out of
mhm,
respect to the people.
yeah.
who have to
I
live.
I think even in my horror book, I made the dark character, the evil character, in a way he has PTSD or memory problems because he's done some terrible things in his lifespan, and even he can't remember.
Mm.
But I put it down as he's just so old that he's just, he can't remember because he can't remember that far back and stuff. But in a way, it's a PTSD. But yeah, there are definitely times that I'm sitting there writing and I hear something on the telly or I hear something on the radio or something like that, and boom, I'm flashed back to that moment, and it scares me
Yeah.
because all of a sudden I'm covered in sweat, and it really kills me sometimes that I'm just like I'll come back and what the hell's just happened?
Yeah, yeah. You got to take a break. You just have to be like, I have to process this. This is the, you
Yeah.
know. I mean, it's probably not as bad as someone watching the movie Kazam. I mean, that is PTSD inducing.
Yes.
Because once Shaq becomes the genie, I
Yeah.
am the genie.
Yeah.
You're just like, I don't need. I have this in my, and I have a photographic memory, so I have to see that for the rest of my life. Uh,
Yeah, but I love in a some well, actually, I was told by my therapist when I first started seeing one
mhm.
that sometimes the best thing to do is to confront your illness,
Oh yeah,
confront what you think is the problem. So, the reason why I didn't join the Royal Navy is I have a fear of sharks. I absolutely cannot stand sharks. I freak out
yeah,
anything, but I'll constantly watch shark movies because I got to get through that that feeling and stuff. And or when I go to an aquarium, I'll sit there and watch them with the idea, well, there's a big thick glass between us, and hopefully it won't break.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, even if it did, like, what are they gonna do? Just flap
Yeah,
around.
yeah.
You ever hear people say, don't worry about sharks. All you got to do is turn them over and they fall asleep." You're like, what?
They're really big?
And well, they apparently, if you turn any shark over, they fall asleep. But the idea that don't worry, all you have to do is turn them over. That's like saying if you take an alligator's mouth with 3 fingers, they can't open their mouth. Yes, but you still have to.
I haven't heard that one.
Yeah, that's it. Their mouth doesn't. They don't have the strength to open their mouth with. So you could hold it with 3 fingers, but you forget that the strength is 1,000 pounds. Crush when it closes. Its tail whips. It has weight and strength. It has claws. It has the death roll.
Yeah,
If an alligator is running after you, I'm not going to go.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
I'm going to.
Yeah,
You know.
try that in the Sahara or, in Nigeria or something like that. Can I, let me try this on you, will you?
Yeah. Why are you afraid of cobras? All you gotta do is grab them by the neck from behind, right? And
Uh-huh.
then they can't hurt you. They can't hurt you.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
alright. So I have to try to grab them though, right?
Right, yeah, but yeah, so I do the same thing when it comes to, all sorts of stuff, shark movies,
Mhm.
go to the aquarium, something like that. I took, a cousin of mine in Edinburgh one time, we went to, the aquarium, and you could feed the sharks, and I thought, "With food or with my cousin?" You know? And, they were like, "Oh, what are you talking about?" And I'm like, "Did you feed them before we got there,
Yeah,
or are we the food?" They didn't think that was a funny thing, yeah,
yeah.
but
He
yeah.
lifted his hands yelling at you. Why would you say that? That's the
Yeah,
it's missing a
exactly.
hand.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't understand why you would say that. Uh, speaking of PTSD, what aggravates the hell out of your soul when you're reading a book about anything that has Celtic in it? What is one of your biggest pet peeves about people who write Celtic stuff and you know that they don't know what they're talking about?
Uh, First thing, that I would probably say is, especially if it's an American writing a book about the Celtic world,
Yeah.
uh, they always get the idea that there's, when you think of or when you say the name McGregor,
Hmm.
it's not pronounced McGregor.
McGreg.
It's pronounced McGregor.
Yeah,
And
McGregor. Yeah.
yeah, and I remember years ago, because I do these hikes in Scotland. I take people out and show them, tell them as we're getting great exercise through the Highlands, and we're going through different clan areas and stuff. But one area we're going through is McGregor's, Rob Roy McGregor's area, and I'm like, do not go into the village and roll that R because you might get slapped. Do not say McGregor. I'm a McGregor. And
Yeah.
because they'll say, oh, yeah, boom.
Yeah, but what if you can't
And,
help it? Like, I speak Italiano and, you got to roll your R's sometimes, It's a
yeah.
ragazzo, So, like, you can't help
Yeah,
it.
there were times my wife was when she was in the Navy, she was stationed in Naples. And when we went there, I'm like, well, how do you pronounce this or something like that? She goes, do not say it like that.
Yeah, it's Napoli.
Yeah. Yeah. No, 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 no. Why? Because they will literally slap you across the face like you were, they are a nun and they're, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. They'd be like, "Sucro grande metanios."
Yeah. Oh, no, 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 no.
No, don't do that.
Yeah. I'm not Catholic, but they made me feel Catholic. Like, okay, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, yeah. You gotta. I think it's mandatory to be Catholic if you're near the Roman, the Roman areas. But
But yeah,
what?
that's probably the first thing I would say is when you pronounce a Celtic name, Scottish, Irish, something like that,
Yeah, yeah.
don't roll an R or a G or something like that. That's probably my first pet peeve.
See, I thought all last names in Scotland were actually pronounced Braveheart.
Yeah.
Uh,
Ian Braveheart McGregor.
but what I was talking about is like in books, like when you're reading a book, what is like one of your biggest pet peeves within the book that like seems to be a common trend among misinformed writers of the Celtic traditions?
The other one probably is the fact that people miss the idea that not all Celtic stories in love. I've read a few stories that they always presume that men in kilts are the most romantic people in the world. Or, if you meet that Highlander out there on the trail, that he's going to be big and buff and scrawny and,
You leave Jamie alone.
yeah. And so I think Highlanders and Scotsmen and Irishmen are we're all the same. We all have beer bellies. We all have the idea that wearing kilts is probably the nastiest thing in the world because like in the Highlands you got the midge, which is the reason why Scotsmen and Highlanders are such angry people, because this little thing will go up your kilt and bite you in the worst places. And it's always the female midge that's biting you too. So, there's a reason why Highlanders are, such arrogant and bullheaded people. It's because they're always being bitten.
Yeah, that's why they dance around a lot because they're trying to get their diphthongs to knock into them to kill the bugs.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah. But yeah, I think probably that's my biggest pet peeve is Scotsmen and Irishmen are not always the romantic people.
So you wish there were more fat Scottish people.
Yeah. Well, I definitely the only time I've met a perfect Scotsman that was probably what you would think of when you think of a romance or a Scotsman is when I was out hiking and I ran into Ewan McGregor and he was out there hiking, but he decided to do it almost shirtless.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean, if you look like him, why wouldn't you?
exactly.
Was he riding his BMW?
Yeah.
He has the BMW
Yeah,
motorcycle.
yeah. No, he was actually he left his motorcycle actually in one of the villages, and he decided to take a hike
Yeah.
up in the Highlands. And I was taking this group. We were just literally passed along, and I knew who he was because I have a photographic memory when it comes to faces. I just can't remember people's names.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably because I have dyslexia on the other side. And
Mhm, mhm.
so that interferes with things like that. But I knew who he was, but my wife didn't. And so we're sitting there talking, and having a good time. We walked a little bit together. We're just sitting there talking, and he just walked off. And she's like, "My God." The few women were in the group, like, who was that? Now I'm looking, I'm like, really? You didn't know who that
You know,
was? And they're like,
don't
God,
make me force the name out on you.
yeah. And I'm like,
Force.
did you see the muscles on that guy? And I'm like, no,
He's a
I
Jedi.
didn't. But, I was looking at the face. I'm like, he's the nicest guy. That was Ewan McGregor.
Yeah. Heard he was a nice guy. His
Yeah.
accent just seems a little fake, but no, just he looks good for a heroin addict.
Yeah. But no, I think the third thing that probably would get me is the fact that people or writers, when they do the Scottish accent, they mess it up.
Oh yeah.
Um, or they get the insults in the wrong places.
Mhm.
And that's probably one thing that I've noticed over time. I think one of the best things that my dad ever taught me is if you're going to uh, experience something, and of course this was years and years and years before I started thinking
Yeah.
about it. If you're going to experience something, you have to be there. And he was a naval officer, and so he was coming back from like the Falklands War at the time.
Oh, the Falkland Islands.
Yeah,
Sorry,
yeah,
my New York accent.
yeah. And so, I'm like, well, what are you talking about? He goes, well, if you want to know about Africa, you have to go there.
Yeah.
And if you want to know about Asia, you have to go there. Learn about the Japanese, the Chinese. You have to go there, experience it, eat the food, smell the culture, meet the people, joke with them, learn how
Yeah.
to talk to them. So that's the thing that I feel that writers, if you want to write about a different culture, you need to go there and experience it first. You need to
Yeah.
talk to those people, and if you're not able to financially, I'm pretty sure in your town or city, if you want to write about the Scots or the Irish, there's definitely going to be places that you can meet them,
Yeah.
pubs or something like that. And you could definitely talk to people because they've immigrated over to America or Canada. You could talk to them and just find out more about that particular area, and that's good research for
Yeah.
you to do that. Same thing. You can meet an Italian everywhere.
We do breed.
Yes, yes.
Now, if you don't have the money to travel, could you just watch Pornhub and
Yeah.
just choose,
Yeah.
ethnicities? Be like, let's watch the Spanish.
Is there a lot of Scotsmen in kilts
I don't
delivering
know.
pizzas?
It all blurs together after a while.
That's true.
Uh,
I think that would be a good industry, the whole Outlander, the X-rated series,
yeah, the show is pretty X-rated. Let's be honest. What happened to your muff? You shaved it. So when she goes to France, whatever, she gets the Wicked Ridge. No, all right. So with that said, we went about an hour. I like to keep it pretty tight. But I ask everybody the same question. I'm gonna pop it on the screen. So, what is one piece of advice you discovered about writing, either through someone else telling you or you discovered it from yourself, that completely changed the way you approach the writing process?
Well, let's see here. I think probably when I was out on tour for my first book, my autobiography, I went to a conference in New York City,
Mhm.
and Stephen King was there.
Who?
Uh, Stephen King, yeah, yeah.
Never heard of him.
This bloke from Maine, literally known guy then. We were put up on the stage, and I just literally was placed right next to him. And I knew who he was. I had only written or read a few of his books, and so I didn't really want to talk to him that much because, yeah, I'm starting off. But afterwards, after going through the Q&A with people, he pulled me off to the side because while we're doing Q&A, he and I were doing some small banter and
Yeah.
stuff. He pulled me off the side and he told me something that definitely has stayed with me through the whole thing, and I think that is the thing that actually made it into the flesh and into what I write.
Yeah.
If you ever are writing and all of a sudden your mind starts to cloud over. Um, you're sitting there writing, and it's kind of like it's that attention span.
Mhm.
All of a sudden, you start going off, and you're like, "Hey, it's sunny outside. I'm going to do this." You need to stop. You need to just put that pencil down, close that computer, and walk away. And he told me that that's the first thing that he's noticed over the years, that writers all of a sudden will just start writing about this great scene about, two guys are duking it out on the boxing, and they're just having this, and all of a sudden a goat shows up. It doesn't make any sense.
Sounds
And
like
he
my
says,
last girlfriend.
yeah. Nice. And so he says, what you need to do is you need to stop doing it, walk away, and come back. It could be a day later, it could be a couple days later. It's not writer's block, but your mind drifts, and you got to make sure you catch yourself doing that. And I definitely catch myself drifting.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's the same thing, like looking away from the computer screen. If your eyes are getting blurry and stuff like that, you need to look away. But I think that's my biggest thing that changed my writing process. Is before that I was writing and I didn't realize that I was drifting away.
Mhm.
And my editor came back to me and said, no, 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 we got to change this. And it actually saved me time. And it actually saves money too, really, when it comes down to that. If you can catch yourself from drifting,
Yeah,
editors come back and they're like, hey, this is really quick. We're done.
yeah, so ultimately what you're saying is like if you're drifting off, then you're not writing in the moment, and the writing will pay for it. You won't benefit from so that's really good advice, because it's like again, for writers out there, it's not always about writing as many words as you possibly can in a day. It's really more about like writing what works for you in that day and
Mm,
allowing it to be fresh. If you could only write for 30 minutes or even 10 minutes, and you're really strong with that, you got good sharp thoughts, and then you have to take a break, take the break. Like the book will be there. It'll be waiting for you. So you don't always have to oh well, I got a deadline. I gotta get 1,000 words in today. It's like, listen, not everyone could, write that many words in a day, so
yeah.
you
I
know,
wish I could write 1,000 words a second, but my computer wouldn't be able to do it.
yeah, no, yeah, I the most I can write in a day is about 3,000 words coherently, and
Yeah.
but that's because I don't have a job.
Yeah.
I'm, I'm retired basically. So
Right, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I definitely don't do, 10 pages every time I sit down. I will write until I feel like my mind is tired,
yeah,
or it starts to drift, and, that could be 5 minutes, that could be an hour.
hmm,
I sometimes feel that, hey, I have all this stuff in my mind, and I know this is gonna be a great scene. I will actually leave my office and say drive to a Starbucks and just sit there and write. And I use the people walking around, the noise around me, as a way to keep my mind from drifting,
yeah,
and because I could focus on something. And or I'll put some headphones on and I'll sit there and listen to music while I'm sitting and writing, and that actually keeps me focused. Because being a musician as well, I use the beat of the music to kind of keep me focused
yeah.
on
Keep the
that
rhythm.
particular scene. Yeah, yeah,
Starbucks is a good place. I like Bordilla clubs. Uh, the atmosphere is really good. I usually get my breast writing down. You know,
yeah, yeah,
it just
yeah.
comes out of me,
Yeah.
fluidly. Sometimes I have
I
a
like the
hard
whips and
time.
chains.
Yeah,
Yeah,
whips it,
yeah,
like, yeah, I really, I get the screams help with
yeah.
the war scenes.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah,
you
totally.
know,
Yeah, yeah, I gotta can you scream that a little bit better there? Yeah,
yeah,
okay, right, okay.
Jim, could you just get round two?
Yeah, okay,
Right.
can you retie that? I need to see how you did that knot there. Yeah.
All right, Mr. Edward, EA Channing, can you tell people how they can find you?
Well, right now I'm sitting on a desk in my office, so that's where you can find me here. But if you really want to find me in the internet world, EA Channon .com is my website, and through there you can go to Instagram and all the other wonderful places that are out there. And like I said, I just finished a horror novel, so hopefully that will be coming out in the next year. I've actually had two prequels that have been sitting there waiting, and the long story short is because of the plague still is out there. It's been taking years for two prequels that I wrote literally 6 years ago to come back out. And I think the artist that did the artwork on those, he's retired by now. He started when he was 20, and he did my artwork years
That's
ago.
funny.
Yeah, but yeah, eachannon.com. You can find out all sorts of fun things that are going on. I love going on to Facebook and Instagram and just putting funny pictures because the world is a terrible place right now. We're going through the ups and downs of life and stuff like that. So I think I try to go on there and I try to post fun things so people can take a moment to laugh. It's good
Right.
therapy to laugh.
Yeah, you got to laugh in life because really, what's the point of it all?
Yes.
And anyone who's listening, so that's just the letter E, the letter A, and then Channing is Channon.
Right.
All this information will be in the description below. So if you're listening to this, it'll be there. But also, just in case you're driving,
Yeah. 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 The first book is on audiobook, and I'm working with some friends of mine in Scotland to actually do the rest of the series on audiobook, and they're just trying to figure out how they can soften down their accents so Americans can understand them.
actually, before we go, I have a question to you because I'm always curious about this. Why do you think when a fantasy book is turned, especially if it takes place on its own world, right? Like R.R. Martin's world is not, Earth.
Right.
Why do they go with English accents?
I think that's an American thinking of. Well, I guess it depends on which characters you're kind of thinking. Most people think elves are always going to be the English because they're high, privileged, and
It sounds smart, right?
they sound smart, yeah, and I think it could be the fact is we English are very smart because we had to learn Shakespeare when we were 6 years old.
Yeah.
It still haunts me to this
Shakespeare
day.
never, wait, but Shakespeare didn't have to learn Shakespeare.
No, he didn't. He was so lucky. He's
No,
probably the only student that didn't have to do that.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's right. He did.
Uh,
He owned a town though. He bought up a town over his lifetime.
yeah, I know. And then he made everybody learn his own work, and that was, then he got kicked out of his own town. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, he had his twin children. Yeah,
But no, I think that's probably it. Yeah, and then every dwarf has to be Scottish.
Scottish, yeah, because they're rough and gruff.
Yeah, and so I've never understood that because dwarves come from Scandinavia, so I've never understood that. Uh, but I have a friend of mine who's Welsh, and I call him my wee little Welsh hobbit because hobbits. A lot of people didn't know that hobbits actually for Tolkien actually came because he loved Wales,
Yeah, he loves the whales. Yeah.
and the Welsh lived in mines or that type of atmosphere. So if a good way to insult a Welshman is calling him a hobbit.
So, but is it nice to be short with them? I mean,
Yeah,
not to give them the bare hairy feet, but like, I just, yeah, all right. So that makes sense. Yeah, I hope if my book ever gets made into like, a movie or a television show, like that they just choose to use not established like make up an accent,
yeah,
just
yeah.
like I listen, let's be honest, Edward. Next audiobook I hear from one of your books, I want to hear him just be like, all right, this next story, like I just want that high voice. Just wake it up, nobody, we don't know what they sound like, it's all fake.
Yeah, I could just see the dark elves. You think they come walking up to you and they're like, "Oh my god, this guy, he's gonna kill me." The guy comes up and goes, "Hello there, how are you?"
I'm fine, found you on the battlefield. Oh God.
Yeah, a eunuch dark elf. That's what he is.
He was nice, but he's a eunuch. So
Yes, yeah. Yeah, no, I think, the same thing with my series, when Netflix buys it up and, then cancels it after the first season, that the evil guys all have these weird, clown voices or something.
yeah, all have or marriage is what brings it. That's how they talk. They have like lisps and stuff.
Yeah, perfect. Yep, brilliant.
Yeah, it would still be better than Discovery of a Witches. So let's be honest.
I haven't seen that one, but yeah.
Even if you have seen it, you haven't seen it. You know what I'm saying? Because your brain would be like, "We got to cancel this out. It's too traumatic."
Yeah.
Let's call it. But anyway, with that, Mr. Edward, thank you so very much for coming on and enjoying some talkage with me.
It's great to talk to you again, sir. It was
Yeah,
always great.
absolutely.
Definitely,
We'll do this again. I promise.
totally.
But to everyone listening, I'm Thomas J. Bellezza. This was The Right Mindset. And as always, keep developing the right mindset. See you next time. Bye.